be here tonight with all of you and to begin this very important process. To all of you who have been involved and were definitely vocal voices when it came to community selection, and you shared your preparedness to take part in this process and to look to bring resources and incentive funding to help improve air quality in the Arvin and Lamont community. Just really excited to undertake this with all of you. It's going to be over the next 12 months. We have a lot of work to do in the development of a community emission reductions program, which is really going to be the basis for us. It's going to be the framework for us over the 5 years after that, to the various measures that we're going to undertake together to implement to improve air quality and reduce emission exposure to the residents of the community and the businesses and everybody else that live and work within the area. And then the other key piece is the community air monitoring plan that we're looking to develop with the input from everybody in the community. And it's definitely an interactive process where we rely upon the expertise and the knowledge of everybody in the communities. And I know we're fortunate to have people that are participating in this, that have been involved in other communities and have a knowledge base and I know have been active in sharing that with the other community members to get us started out on the right foot. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gus Aguirre Jr., who has served on the statewide AB 617 consultation working group, which has consisted of EJ organizations, air districts, industry, academia, public health organizations, and local government. And it's been heavily involved in developing the guidance and for the AB 617 program statewide. And Gus has been heavily involved in participating and sharing his experience and his knowledge, both as a resident of Kern County, as well as his work as the Kern County director for the Central California Environmental Justice Network. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Gus to share his thoughts of the importance of AB 617 and how it can benefit everybody in the community. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Good evening to everyone. Again, my name is Gustavo Aguirre Jr., and I'm with Central California Environmental Justice Network, right? And the reason why I'm here with you all sharing this space and very much excited is because of AB 617, right? AB 617 by legislators and by many folks was coined as a down payment for environmental justice communities, right? We know that in our country, in our state, there are communities that are overburdened more than others, right? And this bill, AB 617, really focuses into those communities with a strategy of developing two things, a community air monitoring program and an emissions reduction program, right? That the community will put together, right? And in this case, community means residents, means regulated parties, means local government, means so many other folks, right? And why this is very important, because the historic organizing that has happened in this region of South Kern, right? With CCJN, well, something we've done is we're very much heavy focused on community science research and community science projects, right? That really highlight the need for programs like this, like AB 617, community monitoring programs, right? And given the historical context of, year after year, the air quality issues that we have at a regional scale, at a state scale, and even very locally at the neighborhood scale, right? We see that there are disproportionate communities that are being affected by pollution. In 2017, we deployed, at that time, a state-of-the-art air monitoring network in the city of Arvin, where we deployed 7 multi-sensor air monitors in Arvin, in different parts of the neighborhood, right? and determined through this project that folks that live at fence line to some of these sources of pollution are exposed to higher levels of toxicity, right? And with that, we want to emphasize and bring, truth to power to these communities, right? That they've been advocating for so long, right? Not that they have to validate any of the work that they've done, right? But this gives an opportunity to really showcase with scientific data what could be accomplished, right? And the mission really of this, as we were back in 2017, as we were developing this consultation group group, which was environmental justice advocates, it was presidents of like WISPA, it was academics, it was researchers, it was economic people from different strides of all of California, right? As we came together with this, part of the blueprint was that this program, this AB 617 program, should be and will be a community-driven platform, right? There should be community solutions that will come, and these solutions are solutions that stated in the blueprint should go above and beyond what already exists, right? We have programs like the Carl Moyle program and other incentive programs that our San Joaquin Valley district is very well, very good at, right? And although we look at these programs, we really try to go above and beyond. I myself also sit as a steering committee member for the AB 617 Shafter community. And a lot of us environmental justice residents from the US-Mexico border up into West Oakland are part of a regional kind of community-based AB 617 collaborative as well. So the perspective that we bring to this is from a community solutions perspective, looking at scientific data, coming together with everyone at the table and really making those very constructive conversations that we will have here moving forward, that will shine light on the necessity and the needs, right? And how this program could be this vessel to communities like Arvin, Lamont, and others in the development of these strategies, right? So we're very pleased that AB 617 is coming to South Kern. We're very pleased by the partnerships that have already been developed and that will continue to be developed, interagency between residents and industry and beyond, right? So we're very much excited for this, and we very much look forward to working with you all, everyone here on the Zoom, and AB 617 moving forward. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Ryan. That was awesome. A really good introduction, I think, for everyone. So we would love to get a little bit more of kind of a sense of who's in the room, who's here today with us. And so we'll jump into a quick icebreaker using the Zoom polling function. So it's also a chance to kind of test out Zoom and if this works for us, and try out these polling questions. And yeah, just get a better sense of kind of who is in the room. And then we'll hopefully have a few minutes to also just hear some introductions from a few people that decide to volunteer afterwards. So Nicole is going to jump us into a quick Zoom poll. And so in front of you, you should see the questions. So how long have you lived or worked in the community?
Okay, let us just take it one moment. Nicole, can you see the questions on your end?
I can see lots of responses are coming in. We're at about 45% of participants. So we'll give it just a moment for everyone to participate, and then we'll show the results. Okay, we'll give it 3 more seconds and I'll close the poll. Oh, lots of activity in those last 3 seconds. Great job. Okay, now I can share the results.
Great.
All right.
That's awesome. So it looks like a number of you have lived here or worked here for 20 to 50 years, and Also, a number of you 50 plus, at least 5. And so, but a really good spread actually, and a few that have been here less than a year or a few years. So we've got a really good spread of people represented here. But that is impressive. A majority of you have been here at least 20 years, which is awesome. All right, we've got another question for you. So who are you representing today? So we've got here a few different options. Yourself, so if you're a resident, for example, if you represent a government agency or part of the business community, or a nonprofit or community-based organization. So feel free to answer that.
I have multiple ones. What should I use?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, is it select all that apply? I forget, Nicole.
No, apologies. It's only select one.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Your
Well,
heart.
whatever you're feeling the most in this moment. How about
Yeah.
that? Sorry about that. We were hoping for select all so that you could choose multiple.
Okay, it looks like we have 63% participating. So let's give it a few more seconds. And I'm about to end the poll. Okay, here's our results.
Great. All right. So it looks like the majority of people here today are representing a nonprofit or community-based organization. Of course, some of those people may also be residents. So knowing that, and then we also have, you know, about a quarter of us are representing yourselves, whether that's residents or some other affiliation. Government agencies, about a quarter of us, and about 11% business community. So pretty good spread. And so that's exciting. Okay, thank you. So we've got another question, a couple of questions for you. Have you ever served on a community steering committee in the past? And this could be any sort of, you know, kind of community committee that you've ever served on in the past.
Okay, seeing nearly 50% of participants have selected their answer. We'll give it a few more seconds, but it seems like everyone's getting warmed up with polling.
And if anyone is having any troubles with the poll, let us know as well, either in the chat or verbally. We just want to get a sense of how easy this is to use, whether you're on your computer, your phone, etc.
And I'll close the poll in just a few seconds. Let's get those last responses in. I'm going to end the poll and share the results.
Great. Okay, so this is a really good spread. So it looks like about half of us have been in a community steering committee and half of us have not. So that's really exciting because it means that there's a lot of people that are, you know, for the first time really getting involved in this sort of kind of committee and this sort of work in their communities. And we're very excited to have you here. So I think those of us that have participated in these in the past, our goal is to really welcome those of us that have not. And so it's exciting to see, you know, we've got a really good spread of people that have experience and can bring what they've learned in these different types of committees and groups in the past to the table, and also welcome the newcomers to this type of work. So thank you. All right, we've got another question, a couple of questions for you, I think. Okay, so let us know how, which of these is true for you. I mostly attend online meetings via which of these methods? So we've got laptop, desktop computer, tablet, smartphone, calling in via a regular phone. So there's many ways to connect, but we're curious how people are connecting.
Can we choose multiple?
We have a select one answer. So we're looking for the one that you use to join meetings most of the time. What do you use most often? We do recognize there's lots of ways to join meetings. Okay, it looks like we have over half have participated. We'll give it a few more seconds to get in those final responses. Thank you so much for participating in our polls today. It's a lot of fun to get to know the group.
Yeah, great. So it looks like what we have here so far is, should I go ahead, Nicole, or did you want to wait a second?
There we go. Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Great.
All right, so it looks like just over half of us are on a laptop or a computer or some sort of a laptop. And then about 15% of us are on a desktop computer. 3 of us are on a tablet, 6 of us on a smartphone. And then we've got 1 person that's called in just on a regular phone as well. So it looks like, you know, most people have some sort of access to a computer, but a lot of people are actually on smartphones and phones as well. So we want to keep that in mind as we move forward and work together to think about how do we make sure that these meetings are accessible to everyone, no matter what the device is that you're on or how you're connecting. So we want to be thinking about that as we move forward to make sure that we're, you know, welcoming everyone despite the way that you're connecting. So thank you.
And here's our last question.
Okay, so how often do you participate in Zoom meetings? So I'll let you take a look at that and answer. So we've got very often, like weekly, often like 1 or 2 times a month, occasionally, maybe 1 time every few months, or rarely 1 to 2 times per year, or never.
Okay, we have about 45% of responses in. I'll just give you a sneak peek from what I'm seeing. It seems like many of us spend a lot of time on Zoom. Okay, we'll just give it a few more seconds to get those responses in.
And maybe right when you share that, we'll kick it over to Maricela to answer Cesar's concern about the phone line.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
Okay, so yeah, so it looks like most of us are on Zoom very often at this point in our lives. Whereas a few of us are just occasionally, like 1 or 2 a month, and some are rarely on it. So most of us, it seems like, are probably pretty comfortable with Zoom, but there's definitely a few that maybe are less familiar. And there's also so many Zoom functions that we know that are out there. And so that's another thing we'll be thinking about in terms of making sure everyone's comfortable with how we're using Zoom, the online tools that we're using, et cetera. So I'll hand it over to Maricela to address the issue that we were having.
Si están teniendo problemas técnicos y quisieran escuchar la reunión en español, esto es simplemente para las personas que quieran escuchar esto en español. El número de teléfono para el cual llamar es el 888-431-3632 y el código de acceso es el 2897-739 y el tecla o el signo de número. Lo voy a repetir de una vez más porque parece que personas están teniendo problemas técnicos. Entonces, para llamar y escuchar esta reunión en español, el número de teléfono es el 888-431-3632 y el código de acceso es el 2897-739, tecla o el signo de número. Y porque está otro número en la pantalla o en chat, pero esto es para simplemente si lo quiere escuchar en inglés. Pero el que les estoy dando yo ahorita es para escucharlo en español. En este momento, ¿alguien tiene alguna pregunta o algún problema técnico que necesita ayuda? Ok, no estoy escuchando nada de eso, entonces vamos a esperar unos momentos para que así las personas puedan ingresar al número de teléfono en caso de que necesiten ayuda o en ese momento, si tienen alguna pregunta, me pueden dejar saber. Gracias.
Thank you, Maricela. And if anybody else, if any other issues come up throughout the meeting, please let us know in terms of access, either on the Spanish line or any other types of access. So thank you. We want to make sure everyone can be plugged in here. So thank you for the poll. It's great to just get a sense of kind of who's in the room, how comfortable you are with, this type of online meeting. As we move forward, we just want to make sure that we're thinking about, creating a process that's really accessible to everyone, whether you've participated in a community committee, whether you've been on an online meeting before. And so we want to just think about that and really make sure we're accommodating everyone and making this the best experience possible. So we have about a minute left to hear from at least one person. We were hoping to hear from a couple of people, a couple of volunteers. So if there's maybe a resident that would be interested in sharing a little bit about who you are, just introduce yourselves to the full group and share kind of why you wanted to join this committee and kind of what you're hoping to achieve through this. and hoping that our group can achieve together. So if anyone would like to just share, and feel free to raise your hand, and we'll just see if we can get a volunteer. We'll give you a few seconds to think about whether or not you want to volunteer. So yeah, any residents that would be willing to share and just introduce themselves, feel free to raise your hand via the Zoom function, or just feel free to unmute yourself and talk as well. Great, and yes, this is a reminder on how to raise your hand here in the Zoom functions. Okay, great.
Sí.
We have Jose Gurola. If you'd like to share a little bit about who you are and why you joined this committee. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Jose Gurola. I've been a lifelong Arvin resident and former council member, mayor, and former member of the current council of government. I'm extremely excited of the opportunity to participate in these meetings and for AB 617 to select the Arvin Lamont community. I won't be able to stay throughout the entire meeting, so I'll just briefly mention some of the comments regarding to some of the other topics. Wanting to expansive as much as possible, the boundaries, including the DiGiorgio corridor that connects Arvin and Lamont, that includes a lot of industry. And as part of the members of the committee, would hope that as many community members as possible are part of the committee, excited to do the work, thankful for the selection, and ready to get to work. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jose. Excellent. And sorry you can't join the whole meeting, but thank you for sharing a couple of your thoughts. And is there one more person that is a resident or a business that would like to say hello and introduce themselves and just share who you are and why you joined this committee?
I see a hand raised from a resident, Jose Mireles.
Great, thank
Jose,
you.
would you like to unmute yourself?
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es José Mireles, presidente del Comité Progreso de aquí de Lamont. Primeramente quiero darles las gracias a ustedes por haber escogido a Lamont. Y quiero decirles que estoy muy contento estoy orgulloso de que nos hayan escogido. Y quiero ver a ver cuáles van a ser los cambios y que sea una mejor salud para nuestros hijos aquí localmente, para nuestros nietos y para todos los residentes de aquí. Y gracias.
Yeah, first of all,
Gracias,
thank
Jose.
you very much. My name is Jose Mireles. I am a resident of, and I'm very happy that you guys have chosen Lamont. I want to make sure that we started seeing changes here and that our families and community can enjoy a better health. Thank you.
Great, excellent, thank you. All right, well, it's great to hear from a couple of you, and we do hope in the future meetings, starting next month, that we get a chance to really hear from everyone and get to know each other. But this was just a chance to hear from a couple of you and get a sense of who's in the room. So we do want to now switch over to hear from Jessica Olson and Michelle Byers to get an overview of kind of what is the Community Air Protection Program. So they'll be presenting a bit on that, and we'll have a chance for Q&A as well. And then from there, we'll also be talking about the community boundaries.
Absolutely. Before, I did see some hands up and then they went down. So I just want to make sure I'm not speaking over anyone. So if your hand went down, maybe I'll take that as, okay, yeah. So I saw Jesus and, oh, wait, it went back down again. Feel free to raise it. And as Julia said, we can take questions after if that's what it's related to. So I am actually, for the sake of time and to not make sure that we're not just presenting too many slides at our first kickoff meeting, I am here to just introduce myself. My name is Jessica Olson. I am a program manager with the Valley Air District, and we are the local air quality agency that is going to work directly with this community and with the established committee, the community steering committee, as we implement AB 617. And as Ryan Hayashi and Gustavo Aguirre Jr. mentioned earlier in their comments, this is really actually a statewide program, and it's implemented, although the district is who you will get a lot of your emails and phone calls, you'll interact with us on a day-to-day basis. we all work together with state through the California Air Resources Board that you'll often hear us call CARB, to implement AB 617 through the guidelines that come from the state. And so I'm actually going to introduce our colleague at CARB, the California Air Resources Board. Her name is Michelle Byers, and she is going to run through some of the guidelines that Gustavo mentioned earlier that help us guide how the district, how the CSC, which is the Community Steering Committee member, committee, how the public and how CARB all work together to create the emissions reduction plan, to deploy monitoring in the area, and sort of what our different roles and responsibilities are. So I will go ahead and kick it off to Michelle to run through what they call the Community Air Protection Blueprint, which are those guidelines.
Perfect. Thanks, Jessica. And actually, I'm going to ask Brian, who is my supervisor. He's online, going to help me. Thank you so much. He's going to run the slides for me. So I'll get started. Okay. So as Jessica said, I work at the state level. My name's Michelle Byers, and I'm in the Office of Community Air Protection, or we call the state level CARB, which is short for the California Air Resources Board. And people call me your liaison, but you can just call me Michelle. So just reach out if you need anything. I'm here. So I worked at CARB like 20 years ago, but I have come back recently and I'm brand new to this program. So I'm really looking forward to sort of getting to know how all this works along with you all. So it's exciting for me. So just a little bit about me, so you know kind of who I am, where I come from. Spent a decent portion of my childhood living on a farm. I've also lived in urban areas, suburban areas. I've lived in many places throughout the United States. But I have been in California now for close to 30 years, and it's definitely home. And I love all the opportunities to do things around here. And I also love the variety of people that are here, and just, this is home. So I'm super happy to be here and talking with you all and getting to know your community better. As far as my career and educational background, I have background in environmental science and community development and land use planning. But all that aside, I'm basically what most people call a Jane of all trades. I kind of know a little bit about everything, or not everything, but a lot of things, and just enough probably to get myself in trouble. But I also have access to people who actually specialize in things. So if you ever need anything, I will find the person to get the information for you. So that's essentially what it comes down to. So I'm pretty excited to be here with this program that really aligns with my moral perspective on life, and really want to recognize you all in the community as the experts. You all know your community, you know the air you breathe, and you know how it impacts your health. And so I'm here to serve you all, to lift your ideas, to find you information, to get the resources you need. So if you need something, feel free to reach out, and I'll have my contact information down at the bottom. So okay, so I'm going to give you just a really high level description of the blueprint, because you all are brand new, or a lot of you have already heard it before, so I don't want to get into too much detail until you need it. But hopefully you've all received a copy of your blueprint in print. If you have not, and you're going to be on the committee, definitely let us know and we will get a copy out to you. So you might want to have this handy. I will refer to a few sections you can flip through if you want. Not necessary, but all right. So, and I also want to let you know there's a link at the bottom of this program, which will be posted, that has the online version available, which is really useful if you want to search up something. So, all right, next slide. Okay, so what I'm going to be presenting today is a super quick overview of the agencies that are involved in air quality and cumulative exposure that has led to this AB 617, as people refer to it. I'm going to talk about the team that we're all together serving Arvin, Lamont, and what our responsibilities are, and talk about the contents of the blueprint, including the air monitoring plans and their emission reduction plans that people call for their acronyms, CAMP and SERB. So I'll try to keep saying that over and over so everybody can kind of get a feel for that. And at the very end, I'll have a lot of resources that I can share with you. So Because this presentation is super high level and keeping it brief, if you have questions, let's talk about it at the end. So definitely hold on to them. Okay. Okay, so when it comes to controlling air pollution, the kind of give you a sense of the overall structure is there are several different agencies that work on it. These are kind of 3 levels of it. At the federal level, the US EPA regulates things that essentially cross state borders, things like trains, ships, and planes. At the state level, which is where I work at the California Air Resources Board, we regulate things that are called mobile sources. These are things that are registered in California but cross borders, cities, counties, and air districts, things like cars, trucks, and buses. Then at the little bit more local level, there is the air district, so Valley Air, and there's 35 districts throughout California, and they regulate things that generally don't move. These are called stationary sources. And it's things like factories and refineries, as well as even residential wood stoves and fireplaces. So together, all of this comes together from their distinct categories to control air pollution. But what happens when a community faces air pollution that rises from all of these categories? So when a community like Arvin, Lamont faces air pollution from all these different sources, crossing all these distinct categories, what we're talking about for you as a person is the cumulative air exposure, your cumulative exposure to air pollution. So another way to look at that is just like the air you go out and breathe every day in your community. This is what your reality looks like, and this is what we're trying to address with this program. This program came about basically to address that. It also takes into account communities that have been overburdened, like yours, that have faced more air pollution than other communities. So we're hoping that we can help out. So just also want to mention that there are some people that are particularly vulnerable, people that are children or the more experienced generations. And so we definitely pay more attention to specific areas they spend time, like schools or retirement communities. Okay, so again, kind of looking at the bigger picture, in 2017, the legislature passed what we call AB 617, which looks at the more holistically at the air pollution and it established the air protection program, which is what we're under right now. The idea is to improve the air quality at the community level by partnering with you all and having you all help us prioritize. So kind of looking at this slide going from the top left and counterclockwise, there are statewide emission reduction strategies and regional things like funding development and cleaner technologies. And then the state has new databases and emission reporting requirements to support these kind of efforts. And then the 2 on the right is basically your steering committee and Valley Air are going to collaborate so you can produce these local action plans, and these will identify and prioritize places to measure air pollution and what will result in what's called a community air monitoring plan, or the acronym of CAMP. And you also identify ways to reduce air pollution in the Arvin Lamont community, and that will result in a document that we refer to as Community Emission Reduction Program, or by its acronym, SERB. So these all combined, the idea is to bring cleaner air to the Arvin Lamont residents. So when it comes to implementing this 617 plan, or the community air protection, it takes all of us to ensure that our result is action. We find real improvement on the ground. So each of us have different responsibilities. And so at the state level, at CARB and the Air District kind of form the foundation. And at the state level, at CARB, we launch the program, we've established program requirements, and we provide oversight. We also continue to develop new statewide strategies, and we also issue community air grants. The Air District plays a big role in that they partner with you all to develop these local action plans that we've just mentioned in the last slide. So the Air District also offers incentive funding, and they develop rules and regulations on industrial sources. So the steering committee is there at the top. That's the most important role to play. You are going to provide direction on your primary air quality concerns and how to structure the programs to respond to those concerns. So you all are the key to all of this. The steering committee is going to provide direction on how it functions, its objectives, and strategies to achieve these through the charter. The Arvin Lamont community and the steering committee are also going to partner with the Air District on local monitoring efforts and figuring out how to achieve the emission reductions. So a little more specifically, what the steering committee will do. What will you all do? So you're going to work with the Air District. We're all going to collaborate together to develop these local action plans and figure out how they're going to be implemented to meet the goals of the community. You all are going to provide direction on your final boundaries and your committee charter. And for anyone who's not familiar with the idea of a charter, it's a document that kind of establishes the rights, powers, privileges, functions of a committee. Kind of at the minimum, it sets the objectives and the roles and responsibilities, how often you meet, days, time, location, all kind of that kind of stuff, whether you need interpretation services and what kind. And one of the most important things it's going to do for you all is you will set up sort of how the committee is going to vote and then how you're going to resolve disputes. So those are two very important parts of the charter. And I just want to say that like the success of the emission reduction program and bringing, cleaner air to the community comes about from this collaborative, community-driven process. And the steering committee is the key mechanism to ensure that the community is participating and that you're leading the way. So, and that we're meeting your needs. The committee drives the discussion and around the community issues and concerns, and definitely participates in the making decisions on the plans. Sure, I didn't skip something here. Yeah. Okay. So in September of 2018, CARB approved what we call the Community Air Protection Blueprint. Again, here's the printed copy of it. And this document basically governs the implementation of AB 617 and ensures that the team of all of us, that we establish, it gives you a minimum requirement for each of the plans, including it covers how we're going to do community selection, the new statewide strategies. It also establishes criteria at the community level for both the air monitoring plans and the emission reduction programs. So the Arvin Lamont community, luckily, is going to do both. So at a very high level, kind of to pull it together, the blueprint criteria are collectively designed to understand the local air pollution, implement solutions, improve your air quality, and evaluate the effectiveness. So let's talk a little bit more about what a CAMP is. This is the Community Air Monitoring Plan. So it's intended to measure the air quality challenges in a way that creates action on the ground and really improves your air. In Appendix E of the blueprint, it contains the minimum criteria for these local efforts. There's 14 of them laid out, and based on those criteria, you, the steering committee, and the community are going to collaborate with the district to design a plan that identifies the reason for conducting air monitoring, discusses how the monitoring is going to be conducted, and how the data then will be used to initiate the action that's needed. So a quick example is if the steering committee decides that a top priority is air quality at a school because of the rates of asthma. That's answering the question of why. The plan would then decide how to monitor the school, meaning what kind of equipment, how often, that kind of thing. And then the data analysis then would provide information on how to achieve emission reductions that would result in better health for those students. So actionable air monitoring data. So that's the idea of what we just talked about. And so there's 4 different kinds of actions that could come out of a monitoring plan. And one of them is kind of a personal choice thing. For example, you might decide that the most important thing in your community is kind of to monitor so that every person knows whether it's a good day to go outside, whether the air is clean enough to go participate in a soccer game, for instance. Or another one would be sort of understanding the sources. Maybe you don't have a good grasp over where the source of air pollution is coming from. So you might want to put your energy and resources and prioritize finding that out. Another one is tracking progress and just kind of making sure that things you've done are really coming to fruition and showing some real improvement for you. And lastly, another one could be supporting enforcement activities. things like increasing visits where they're really lacking right now. So your steering committee has a vital role in figuring out what's going to go into this plan. So now we'll move to the SERBs. And again, that's the acronym that you'll start hearing all over the place, but it's the Community Emissions Reduction Program. So this is one of the other documents you'll be creating to design to improve local air quality right there in Arvin, Lamont. So in Appendix C, this also sort of lays out the minimum requirements for this program. Some of the requirements detail the need for community partnerships, public engagement with a robust public process, which includes you all in the steering committee that is forming tonight. Understanding the local air pollution challenges, from a characteristic perspective and technical perspective, identifying the solutions, and then tracking the progress over time. So the SERB is this kind of the cornerstone of the air protection program, excuse me. The criteria contained ensures consistent quality and rigor and provides a framework that reflects the priorities and conditions in Arvin, Lamont. So real quick, looking at the process and timeline for developing an emission reduction program. After the community selection, which for Arvin, Lamont was in February of this year, the Air District will work in collaboration with you all to develop your emission reduction program, and it must be approved by the district board within 1 year. And then after that, the CARB staff will review it using the checklist and the criteria and guidelines, and we'll write a staff report and take it to our board, who then will initiate an action on that. The implementation phase comes after that, and it's going to take at least 5 years. It requires annual reports to kind of keep it going, and then an additional 5 years will continue to track the progress. So this is expected to be about an 11-year process. And then just real quick to kind of give you an idea of like what is a strategy to reduce air pollution. Here's some kind of 6 broad categories you can think about. You can look at rules, creating rules or regulations, facility-specific reduction, looking at one source that you have that's really needing more attention, air quality permitting, enforcement, using incentives, and also land use, transportation and mitigation. So those are kind of the places we'll look at, and we'll figure out which one of these things will benefit your community the most. So at the end of the SERB, like I mentioned before, there's this checklist at the end of Appendix C, and it provides this structure for the emission reduction program that we'll use to evaluate the program in the end. And it just basically says it has to include these kind of 6 categories: air quality objectives that are focused on particulate matter and toxic air contaminants, the community partnerships and engagement and understanding the community, just making sure we have all the technical information needed. It will set strategies and targets, and it will have an enforcement plan. And lastly, metrics to track the progress. So that's kind of a super quick overview, high level overview of what's in the blueprint, which will basically guide your committee. And I just want you to know there's lots more resources. So here's, this is showing you that we have an online resource center, and the link is there. You can type it in. Hopefully we'll get you an active link out very soon after this meeting, so you can click on that. And this has all kinds of information and resources that are going to be helpful to you, from accessing tools and monitoring data and emission reduction strategies. So we're continuously updating it, so it's something you'll want to come back to. And if you have ideas and things that you need as there in your community of Arvin, Lamont, definitely reach out and let us know. And in case I've gone too fast, I feel like I've been talking very fast. There are videos also online. They're just under 5 minutes, and Trish has a beautiful voice and speaks them much more clearly than I probably am right now. So definitely, if you want to brush up on what the blueprint is, there's a video on there. There's also other kinds of topics like air quality, like what is air quality? And there's like, how do we track the progress of a plan? So definitely, periodically pop in there and watch one of those videos for 5 minutes. There's some helpful links at the bottom too. Definitely, if you want to email us for questions, there's a link there. There is a link again to the same resource center that we just talked about. And If you want to keep abreast of what's going on here at the state level in the Community Air Protection Program, definitely subscribe. And here on the next slide is showing you sort of where the subscribe button is over there on the left. And then it pops up, stick your email in, and you're good to go. So in conclusion, again, my name's Michelle Byers, and definitely reach out to me. Because of COVID, my phone number is not really a great thing to use right at this moment, but if you leave it, I'll check it periodically, but definitely start with email and I'll get back to you. I wish I spoke Spanish, but I don't, but definitely have a lot of colleagues here in the program that do. And so if you want to talk, I'll get somebody to help us translate. That'd be awesome. Just feel free to reach out. And definitely, again, want to repeat that if the committee or the subcommittee or anybody needs a presentation that goes into a little more depth, detail, or on a specific topic, definitely reach out and either I can provide that or I will find the expert that can. So I'm super excited to work with you. It looks like they're kicking me out of the building. I'll have to go turn those lights on, but looking forward to working with y'all.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. That was a really great overview. We want to spend a few minutes to see if there are any quick questions people might have on anything that was just described by either, by Michelle. We are going to have a lot more time in future meetings to really dive into this, but if there's anything kind of high level or big questions of what she just presented, let us know. We can spend a couple of minutes to clarify those. Feel free to raise your hand if you do have a question.
I was going to say, while you're thinking of questions, I'll just verbalize some of the questions that came up in the chat. There are certainly materials tonight and will continue to be lots of materials the upcoming year. Once we establish a steering committee, a lot of great questions about distributing materials. We will distribute materials however we need to get them to you. So if it works better via email, that is the general way we distribute materials, but we will also send materials to your house translated if needed ahead of time. And we will continue again once we establish a steering committee that we'll talk about in a moment here. We constantly are in communication and we'll send all of those materials ahead of time. So thank you for those great questions and for the offer for the help.
Excellent, thank you. And Jess, we are going to hand it over to you for the next topic of community boundary and membership. So it looks like we don't have any other questions about just CARB overview or the blueprint overview from Michelle. So thank you, Michelle. We appreciate it. And hopefully the lights stay on. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you. So if you can, I'm not sure who's sharing slides on the ILG side, but if we can bring up that slide, that's sort of the intro to the boundary discussion. Thank you, Nicole. All right, so this is the exciting part. Several of you, I recognize a lot of names, a lot of faces, and that's because you have been engaging not only the past couple of years, getting Arvin and Lamont selected to finally be a part of AB 617, but really even in the past couple of months, we've had a lot of meetings and taken in a lot of feedback, both the district and CARB, on the selection of Arvin Lamont, and specifically on how we make sure we include really what the community feels is truly the community in that area near Arvin and Lamont. And so the original boundary that a lot of you know, and I will share here in a moment, really only outlined the community of Arvin and then the community of Lamont, and they were sort of separate. And you'll see that in a map I'm about to show. But the proposed boundary that we are actually going to discuss right now for consideration includes a lot of that great feedback we got. There were several folks that feel, and maybe I'm resonating with you when I say this, several folks feel like when you're talking about Lamont, you're really talking about the Fuller Acres and Hilltop community as well. You're talking about Weed Patch. All the areas in between Arvin and Lamont, we actually heard a comment earlier, that really should be, to a lot of folks felt, that should all be part of the same area. It's hard to talk about one without the other. That was, again, heard from directly to the district. It was heard directly to CARB. And so several community members rather, got together and worked with some community leaders and sent the district really what they felt like should be the proposed new boundary. And so I'm going to share that right now. and share my screen really quickly. And what I'm going to show you right now was actually sent out with the agenda. So you can pull it, it's on the website, it was sent out. But this shows, and I'm showing it in this manner right now, so hopefully it's clear. The pink outline is the original outline, the original boundary. The yellow, which includes the pink, and the yellow is the additional boundary, is the proposed new boundary or expanded boundary. And as you can see, the pink right here that I'm circling with my cursor, this is the Lamont area that was originally selected, but up here is that Hilltop Fuller Acres area that was that we heard a lot of feedback about. And then sort of in between here, as you can see, this was sort of that in-between area. It just felt like it made sense to connect the community and to really include a lot of the folks that maybe live in between, and also the sources, right? We're talking about air pollution concerns. We're talking about mobile sources that perhaps drive on 223 and 184. And it felt like from the community feedback that this should all be included. So I'm going to kind of keep this up for a moment so that everyone can sort of digest and understand. And then in a moment here, I'll share a slide, but I'll just verbalize it a little bit. Is essentially what we're going to talk about today right now is it really, truly, if there are no objections, we meaning the steering committee, the community that kind of came together, and the district as well, would like to propose that this would actually be the boundary moving forward. So, you know, of course, we would love to take comments and questions and any other thoughts that you all might have. But this would be our proposal, or the proposal that truly, again, came to us from a committee member or community member rather, to move forward with AB 617 with this being the boundary. And then one thing I'll say, because this might be a question, is we would then for a whole week ask that anyone who lived outside of the pink but within the yellow, so anyone that's in the new boundary, would have a whole nother week to apply to be a part of the steering committee, because obviously initially they were not a part of the original boundary. So I'm going to stop sharing if I may for a moment, but I will bring it up if there are questions so I can see faces and reactions. And I see that there's one question. So maybe I'll, from Patty. I see you've unmuted, but I don't hear. I don't know if anyone else hears Patty.
No, we don't, yeah.
Patty, you're on mute, but you have your hand up and we are giving you floor. Can you speak so we can hear you?
Oh, looks like you're on mute again, so try unmuting and try one more time. And if not, we can see if anyone else has a question or thoughts or that they'd like to share.
Kent.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Kent, and I actually live and farm in between the two original boundaries. I think this is a very good solution, very good solution. If there's anything on the outer boundaries, somebody should mention that now that might be missing. But I think anything that happens in between the two prior boundaries, it affects either, so it should be included also. So thank you. I'll make a motion to approve it if I have that ability. Or whatever, I don't know what you're looking for, Jessica.
I think generally looking for consensus today, and I'll kind of get to that in a moment, but we do not really, I think there was some allusion to it earlier, but because we don't quite have a charter, an official steering committee, because right, we're still waiting for more steering committee members in this new boundary. It would be more like general consensus, and perhaps at the next meeting with an established steering committee, with the chance for new members, then there could be maybe an official final motion and approval. But right now it's more consensus based, I think, is the direction we're going.
Yeah, by including the DeGiorgio and Wheat Patch areas, you're also picking up some of the lower income areas at the same time. So that must be a benefit there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. I appreciate it. I think while
Yeah. Oh, Jess, can you pull up the screen? It looks like we some people wanted to see the map one more time as well. And
Oh, definitely. Yes.
and
will,
it looked a little
share
bit
the
more
screen.
zoomed in.
Yeah. So maybe I'll zoom into it's a little clunky and just clunky because I'm sharing live and video. So it'll take a second to load, but I'll zoom in pretty closely here. And then let it render for a second while we take maybe the next question.
Great. And it looks like Ryan also sent the link to this map as well, right? In the chat, it looks like.
I'm not sure that people will be able to open it.
Okay.
But I will make that change right now, if that's the case.
It worked for me. It is showing as a blue line on the link rather than a yellow.
So just what I sent was the one that we had emailed out. And
excellent. Yes.
On the Arvin Lamont AB 617. The only difference being that it does not include the previous boundaries.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. I'm going to go down a little bit further so folks can sort of see the street names and such here. Okay, sorry, there were several questions. I think Isabel, if Patty doesn't have her unmute, I believe Isabel was next, or Isabel, however you prefer.
Isabel's fine. Hi, apologies for not having my video on today, but I did have a question. I saw the new border, the yellow one. It stops at the communities right under it. There's two huge communities. I know there's one at the far left and then at the far right. I actually live there and I know it's still considered Arvin. I've actually lived there my entire life, 25 years, and have, went to school in this area. And, this is where I grew up. And I was just wondering why it's not included in the new area you guys bordered in yellow.
Again, and maybe, I don't know if there are other community members who helped work on this boundary to propose the new expansion. It's not really the district, but it was sort of as a community collaborative that came to us for the expansion. So I don't really have an exact answer as to why, I think at some point there was just an acknowledgement of not expanding it too far. I think you can always kind of expand it and then see that there's another community and another community. And so maybe I'll go to Bianca, Christine, and then see if there are others who helped work on this that had maybe some answers for you, Isabel. So,
thank you.
Oh, Bianca's on the phone. So maybe I'll go to Christine while I let Bianca work on something.
Hi, everybody. So I'm having difficulty really seeing when those border lines are cutting off. So it would be great if you could send out the map to everybody at some point so we'd have an opportunity to look at it closely. And it could just be my old eyes. But I'm not sure how far north of the 223 we're going. And from my perspective, I think it's important to make sure we're capturing the farmland communities, both to the east and the west of Bear Mountain Boulevard, because a lot of our Arvin agriculture is east of Tejon Highway. But I'm just having difficulty seeing the boundaries, probably because it's on the computer and we're blowing it up.
Certainly, yes, we did send out, but it certainly wasn't a super high resolution version of the map. So we can, if people are interested in seeing like the very specifics, we can certainly send out a link that people can sort of zoom in, zoom out on it on their own as well. I will go to Bianca now.
Hi, I do have a question. I see that you have Panama Road, the line across. Is it possible to include the north all the way to, I don't know if that includes Di Giorgio, like all those packing houses on Di Giorgio?
So I'm zooming in here. There was a question about the Georgia Road and the cold storage. I believe there's some packing houses in this area. Is this what you're referring to, Bianca?
Yes, it was on Comanche and
Yes. And we did, that was part of the email that was sent, some of the communication to the district, Comanche and DeGiorgio. This is included in the boundary currently.
Okay, I'm trying to see, and I try to zoom it in to the one that Ryan sent over, but I couldn't.
There's also a new link too that I think Lizzie posted that may be, I don't know if that's different than the first, but maybe it's easier to see.
Okay.
From the chat, yeah.
Let me look at it. Thank you.
And we saw here a note as well that somebody proposed taking kind of a poll to see where people are at in terms of yes or no with the expanded boundary. So that's something that we could do if we want to as a Zoom poll. But we'd love to hear just any other thoughts. I see a hand up here, Cesar, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, thank you. My question is the boundary gonna strictly dictate the emissions inventory, or will possible emitters outside of those boundaries also be included in the emission reductions? Because if something, you know, falls just barely out of the boundary, but it's also an emitter, you know, it wouldn't be very helpful. But I think if these boundaries are set with the intention of being able to monitor or include super polluters or emitters outside of the boundaries that affect the boundaries inside, I think that would be a good way to go forward.
Great, thank you, Cesar.
Great question. So I will say the boundaries are, you know, of course, I think right now we're talking about membership, but that's a great point that it definitely helps drive, I wouldn't say dictate, but it certainly drives and focuses a lot of the efforts for the community air monitoring program, which is the CAMP, as well as the emissions reduction program. But with the air monitoring program, for example, if we decide to put a monitor, say within the boundary, and we are collecting information that indicates that there's perhaps pollution coming from outside the boundary, that's certainly information that we will use as a committee to help drive some of our actions. You know, moving forward, the boundary hopefully focuses the efforts, but I would say it's not exclusive. Although I will say that a lot of the efforts to put together an inventory at this time, I think would be focused on what's in the boundary, so we can really have an understanding of what's in the community. But that certainly can be some of the discussion that we go with down the road as we're working on the technical assessment. Jose.
I just wanted to congratulate you guys on this map. It's much better. It gives more of a mixture of the different types of businesses and also includes most of the communities in the area. So, you know, if we can go forward with this map, I would say a better solution or a better map for our area.
Thank you, Jose. Emma?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to go back to Isabel's comment about the streets or the neighborhoods to the right of Arvin, I believe is what she said. Isabel, I was wondering if you can say which streets those are and if you see them highlighted. If not, if you can just mention them, we can try Googling the streets.
So the address is Millix Road, and I see you guys included, it's on the far bottom south. You guys cut off right on Millix Road. I live like literally just on the south side of that street. So it's still, I guess, considered a Millix Road, but it's not within the boundary. Right. And there is a decent sized community there that's not being included in the boundary. Yeah.
So you're saying that it needs to be, so from what we're seeing now, that yellow line needs to be extended more south.
Yeah, just a little bit south.
Okay. So I would propose for the boundary to extend to include the little communities. I can't really see the streets on there, but I imagine that it would need to extend to cover those I think water islands that we're seeing.
Yeah.
So Millix Road is right here. And this is, for the sake of discussion, the next sort of big street I see is Creekside Drive, perhaps. But I'll zoom out to kind of give everyone a good picture. Sorry, I'm trying to go slowly so people don't get dizzy. So I believe that would sort of cut us down here. So just for the sake of discussion, I'll just leave it at that while we go to John.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. I'm going to keep my, and I would have my camera on, but again, I've got a feral toddler and a little 3-month-old that I've got bouncing around in my arms right now. So I think that I'm really, it's almost a bit of a concern for me, just how this boundary is growing, it seems like, and I'm not sure what we're really basing it on. Are we just picking communities the further and further we go, and when does it stop, and what's the goal of this thing? And a lot of this is unincorporated that we're talking about. So I would hope that the county would have a large say in this. And so I think my one concern would be that this was created without the whole committee previously, and now we're just, seems like we're adding and adding and adding on. I do understand the membership capacity. We want to have some members within there, but as it continues to grow, want to make sure that this thing doesn't expand to the point of not really making sense. I just want to extend that.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback, John. We appreciate that. Yeah, the establishment of the boundaries is definitely an important topic to have at the very beginning of these meetings, and kind of establishing what the goals and the objectives, and our understanding, and we learned this from our past experience in working with the communities on establishing boundaries, and that all told, the boundary where this is right here, it's not substantially different than the other communities that we have. But understand, I mean, if we continue to grow this, it really takes away this concept of community. It becomes more regional, which the work that we do is more focused on regional. And you've heard other people talk about like when you heard Gus talk about this, the real benefit is that it's focused in the community, and getting those efforts focused in these smaller areas. So when we're looking at this, the size of it overall, it's roughly where we were at with where we ended up with Fresno and Stockton and other communities. And for example, when we did this in Stockton, we had a conversation similar to this, and we had a few people pointing out some areas where they thought that it was important to have some membership in some of the areas that were adjacent to. It didn't substantially change the overall size of the community, and so during that meeting we did extend those boundaries a little bit. But in this instance, I know a lot of people had worked on some of these boundaries, and the areas that we did include, those were ones that were raised as areas through the community selection process at CARB's level. Many people attended those meetings and shared their desire and need to have these communities. And so I think this map is presented has captured that. And basically what we did was we made basically a corridor like community by filling in the space, as Jessica talked about, in between the two communities.
I think Jose was next.
Sí, gracias. Mire, el mapa que yo primero miré, no sé si estará bien, ¿verdad? Pero llegaba hasta la Mountain View, y me gustaría que se extendiera hasta la Panama Lane y la Fairfax, porque es donde está lo más contaminado que pertenece aquí a Lamont. So, esa es mi sugerencia que yo tengo.
Well, I have a suggestion. I'm not sure if the map that I saw was correct, but I would like for that border to be extended from Mountain View Lane to Panama Lane and perhaps to Fairfax. because that's the area that is most polluted.
Great. Thank you, Jose. Excellent. So it looks like we have Jesus and then Melinda.
Sorry, Jesus Alonso? Or?
Yep, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, great. I fully support the expansion of the map. I think it's great that we're incorporating additional parts of our community. As a lifelong resident, Lamont and Arvin have always felt to be just one and the same, one community. And so have the communities in between Waypatch and including Hilltop. So very much in favor of this. And if we, and it sounds like we have community members interested just outside this new boundary, I'd definitely be in favor of expanding in that direction as well.
Great, thank you. And I just want to catch up a little bit before we go to Melinda. We have one chat here. Let's see, just to catch up on the chats. Emma said she supports extending the map to cover the residential community. Linda said, I'm more interested in changing boundaries to include impacted residents than to add industrial sites. As we noted, or as was noted, if a business location outside the boundaries is identified as polluting, then that can still be addressed through the process. So those are two of the points about the map specifically. Great. Oh, and then it says here, Yolanda says that Kern County Public Works staff will be part of the steering committee, community to help review the final approved area for future proposed projects. Okay, great. Thank you. I just want to catch everyone up that may not be able to see the chat. Melinda, would you like to go next, and then Paulina?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to clarify one thing. I thought I understood that Jessica said that for those that are in the expanded boundary but not within the original boundaries, that the timing for submitting applications to be on the steering committee would be extended for another week. And in looking at the Valley Air website, it shows that the period is closed due to significant interest, and then there's only the application to be an alternate. So I just wanted to clarify, did I understand that correctly, or what will that process be?
Yes, we had not put it up there yet or opened it up yet until we had this discussion with you all. But yes, we would then put out the application, and it would, again, to exactly what you said, it would be for those who didn't get an opportunity. And the way that we define that is those that were not in the original boundary, but are in the expanded boundary would then get that opportunity.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Paulina.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to kind of caution kind of the idea that expanding the boundaries undermines the sense of community. I think I fully support the expansion of the boundaries and recognize that it is up to the steering committee, which hasn't been formed yet, right? But I think that ensuring that folks that are neighborhoods that are typically left out are included in this process. I think that's the heart of 617, right? And so just wanted to express that and just really emphasize that. I think I think some questions about like, when does it stop? I think that's a great question for the steering committee to decide. But I think erring on this, I love that the district has included some of the communities already, which I really think captures the spirit of 617, right? That not all, what's Arvin and Lamont as kind of they experience similar issues, and that there are pieces, right, to the pieces that don't really fit to, like, essentially that it's a bigger area than folks really that are actually I guess technically part of the city. And so really just want to echo that I appreciate that and really look forward to the steering committee determining and expanding what that community actually is.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that perspective. I see another hand up, Cesar, and so we'll hear from you. And then also we could take a chance to kind of take a poll and see where people are at with thinking through a couple of options, whether it's, including some of the recommendations people just made about, additional expansions to this map, this expanded map here, and just kind of gauge where people are at. So we can do that in a minute if we want to go there and just do kind of an informal poll to get a sense of where people are at. But let's hear from Cesar first.
And then, sorry, and then afterwards, before we do the informal poll, we'll hear from the Spanish speakers on the phone line maybe too.
Oh, great. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think to Paulina's point, a lot of these communities that fall within the yellow boundary are also communities that fall into the hard to count communities for the census. So getting resources to them is going to be difficult in any circumstance. So making sure that if people within the yellow boundary are living next to polluters and public health can be affected more directly, making sure that emissions are reduced in that location. I think that would be the most important thing to, in a process where things are community driven. I'm here on the CARB greenhouse gas map, and I have a few layers up, and it looks like there is a few of the emitters that are outside of the purple and within the yellow. And I think that it worries me that, some of these are among a refinery, there are quite a few polluters that I think would affect communities that are right nearby them, and seeing that they do fall under that hard to count. Other political or governmental processes would be very difficult to be able to get resources to them. So I think as far as community goes, I definitely think people that are the most affected by air quality is the focus of this. And if there are people that are within this boundary, I think they should be included.
Great. Thank you, Cesar. I see here in the chat that Tim wanted to see if he could get a closer look at the map at the northern part of the boundary. So maybe, I don't know if Jess, that's something you can zoom in on. And then Emma brought up a good point. If we do a poll, not everyone has access to the poll. So we want to make sure we do hear from anyone that's on their telephone only or isn't figuring out the poll for any reason. So if we do a poll, we want to also verbally hear from anyone that's not able to fill out the poll itself. So we'll make sure to count all of those voices as well. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay.
Maricela.
And I also see, oh yeah. And
we're waiting to see if we get any comments at this point. Just one moment.
Thank you. And then meanwhile, Tim has his hand up. I think you wanted to, if you want to share about kind of where it is you want to look on the map or anything else.
No, my simple question is the boundary on the northern part. If we are planning to push it further, I would love to see it end at Red Bank, which is the northern part, and it captures the southern part of Fairfax. But in my hopes were it actually be pushed all the way to touching the 58, so it can capture emissions from the freeway. Since it's already being pushed upwards, might as well include that part.
Sorry, can you clarify what was the street you just named?
Red Bank, which is the southern part of Fairfax, which would include the high school that's on Fairfax and Red Bank. But if to that point that the boundary is where it's only capturing one community and excluding another one, I believe that the boundary should just be pushed all the way to north, so it basically ends at the 58. So it just includes all those communities, because basically right now where you have it is you're excluding the community of Fairfax and it's just sitting right there. Might as well just include it because they're also low income community that is just on the corner outside Bakersfield. So it should be included. Might as well now do it that it's been pushed all the way to the north, because traditionally the boundaries of Lamont and at Panama Lane, and we included already Hilltop and Full Acres, might as well include Fairfax as well. Which is just a few miles up north.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I see one more hand up, Jesus. And then what I'm hoping is that maybe, Jess, if you could run through kind of the major recommendations you've heard of, based on any additional changes to the yellow, expanded boundary. And then what we want to do is just get a sense from the group if there's any objections to that. So maybe we start there, and if we feel like people are all over the map, then we could do a poll, but otherwise we may just start to see if anyone objects to those recommendations. So let's hear from two hands up, Jesus and Evelyn, and then we'll kind of have a summary from Jess on the proposals.
Thank you. I definitely want to object to the last suggestion, pushing the boundary all the way to the 58. As I understand, and maybe this can be clarified, but if we draw a boundary, it's not going to exclude polluters from or Bakersfield or anything like that. We're still going to capture that, right? And so I think we should kind of look towards the traditional boundaries. I am on the board of Fair Mountain Recreation and Parks District. That's one boundary. The city of Arvin has their own boundary. Jose Gonzalez can speak to the boundaries of the township of Lamont. And I think if we can kind of stick to those traditional or boundaries, I think it might be able to provide us more guidance. And say, I have some family members that live, north of this street, or that also want to be included. I'm just very cautious with this conversation and drawing our own boundaries when we kind of all included when this idea first was put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesus. You cut out a little bit, but I think we heard most of that. And I'm curious, Jess, if you had any response that you wanted to share now.
I think just something we traditionally will talk about a lot once we get into the weeds on air monitoring is, of course, we know air pollution has no boundaries, right? The boundaries that we select are really about the community. That's been said a lot of different times here, participation, being a part of the community steering committee, but the air monitoring is going to capture whatever the air truly is. And a lot of the technical analysis is really going to help drive sort of how we develop that emissions reduction program. The boundary just sort of helps, again, focus. It helps identify the key players involved, but certainly that does not mean, and you will see this throughout every meeting, that does not mean we exclude anyone who's outside the boundary. They participate as public members. That does not mean we don't talk about other sources that might be impacting. We just focus a lot of our resources, focus the monitoring resources, focus the committee on that boundary. So I think that hopefully that helps clarify.
Great, thank you. So I see Evelyn's hand up and then Emma. And then I just want to make sure that the translation is working for everyone I see here. Okay, perfect, thank you. And Jose. Okay.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I just, my objection is to continue increasing or moving the boundary. I really am thinking that, there was a point made earlier about why are we truly extending the boundaries? What's the reason behind it? And I think that maybe we should start by, doing the reports or looking at what the polluters are. And then if we determine that the heavy polluters to our communities are truly some of those, be it factories or farming communities that are outside of those boundaries currently, then look to increase that boundary and then open that up again, perhaps to more people to join the steering committee. But I think that maybe so we can kind of get the ball rolling, let's start with that and then determine if we should increase it or not. Right now I think we're just kind of increasing it to where we think, would be a good place to start and stop, without really having the facts behind it. And so that's my proposal, is to continue on as we are with the new boundaries that are yellow, and then determine if they should be extended once we've done the research on where our polluters are coming from.
Great, thank you, Evelyn. Excellent. I think next is Emma and then Jose. And then Ryan, if you want to chat afterwards. Okay.
Yes, so I'm hearing a few things here, which is that some sources will not be counted, some will be counted. I think, Jessica, if we can go back to your comment earlier, you mentioned that the initial inventory of sources would be those included in the boundary. Is that correct? I think that's what you had ended your comment on.
Right, and maybe I'll let Ryan clarify just so that I'm not, yeah. Thanks.
So there's been different models that we've taken when it's come to AB 617. So it seems like this conversation that we're having here is similar to what happened in Shafter. So for example, in Fresno and in Stockton, the sources that were reported that were discussed as part of the AB 617 process were the sources within the boundary. We didn't look at the sources outside. When they drew the lines, they tried to capture the sources of the sources of concern within the boundary and to focus on emission reductions and exposure reductions, focusing on those sources. Now, this is similar to Shafter. It's a urban, rural interface community. In that instance, they had the community boundary, which was the boundary where the steering committee was based out of and from. But then there was like a larger radius that was was included when it came to looking at emission sources that were impacting the community. And so when we provided emission inventory for that, we did it for the entirety of that that new radius or the circle around the community itself. So hopefully that answered your question, Emma. So I mean, there's different ways, I guess, of going about this. And so there may be opportunity to do something similar to what we did in Shafter, where you establish a community itself where the community steering committee is formed out of, and then you look at maybe another boundary where you're looking at sources that are impacting that community.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify again, the map that we're looking at, this is the map that you all have suggested to move forward, right? That we have suggested to move forward with, which already includes the Fuller Acres Hilltop community, but does not include a residential community south of Arvin, right? Which we have folks here representing that area. Therefore, maybe we should expand the boundary at least to cover that residential area that is not included. Now, again, I support extending the boundary to include multiple sources of pollution. Like you said, Jessica, pollution doesn't stay in one place; it goes everywhere. And folks already, frequent those areas. And so, I think as long as this map is not, I'm okay with extending the map. I think it just should not go any smaller than what we're looking at right now.
Thanks, Emma.
Thank you. So I do want to be conscious of time. It's 6:41, and so we have about 15 minutes left before we need to move to public comment. So in terms of wrapping this up, I see 2 additional hands up. And Ryan, I'm not sure if you also wanted to say something else, but I see John and Jose's hands up. So if we could end there with final comments and then think about how to move forward. What I'm hearing is that there's a few different possibilities here, and we don't have to decide right this second. So let's think through how we want to kind of move on next steps there. But the 2 hands that were up, did you put your hand? Oh, there we go. I think you put your hands down potentially, but I see Bianca's and John's hand up. So
we did have Jose and John, and then Bianca just rose her hand. Jose, did you still want to speak?
Sure. I just wanted to say that this map is actually a very good representation of all the boundaries within our in our areas. You have Lamont School District, you have the LPUD, you have Vermont Parks and Recreation, but where you have the majority of our residents already, I think this is a good map, a good starting point, a good representation of our area. I'm not opposed to extending it, but extending it too much further. This would be, I would say, would be a good starting point for us. But that's just my own personal opinion.
Great, thank you. So then we'll quickly hear from Bianca and John, and then move on to kind of wrap this section up.
Just a quick question. Are you guys voting for it or just taking a poll to make sure on expanding the boundaries? What is the idea?
Well, I think right now we won't have time to do a poll right now in this second because we just only have a few minutes left. But we can consider how to do that moving forward, whether it's an informal poll, where we email it to you and ask offline and have people respond that way. We have to think through kind of what makes sense and what the Air District would like to do with that. So yeah, so nothing, and it definitely wouldn't be a formal vote because we're not a formal committee yet. I think right now we just want to gauge kind of where people are at. But I'll also let the Air District answer that question if Jess or Ryan wants to.
Yeah, so I guess what we're looking to hear from individual or the members here tonight is just if there's major concerns with this new boundary, because we are looking to open up the applicant pool. It sounds for the most part that there's not a concern with in general with what it looks like right now. So I mean, if we did open this up, then potential had people applying with the maybe what I've heard is incorporating that community to the southwest, which is maybe a few square miles in addition to what we have that would pretty much encompass. I think that would cover the areas, and then what we could do is send out a revised map and along, and obviously post it as well, and then look to get people in those areas to apply if they so desire.
Yeah, it would be great if we could leave here today with at very least no major objections to the yellow, and then I agree, then the addition, as has been pointed out by Emma and Isabel and Ryan, this area down here. If we could leave today with no major objections, then we can start that process sooner than if we sort of waited for feedback. And then again, the next meeting is where we would formally, so maybe if there were small adjustments here and there, but if we, hopefully we could just formally adopt the final boundary at the next meeting with the established committee.
Great, thank you. So hopefully that helps clear things up. And I see John and Maricela also have their hands up. And Bianca, was your hand up from before? Was that kind of?
No, I actually wanted to maybe address this. If we can't find consensus at this meeting, is it possible just to have a strictly one meeting to get this boundary line vote in? Because we did struggle a lot in Shafter to even expand the boundaries, and we don't want to have the same issue here in Arvin. Let's get it over with. If we could add another meeting, if it's possible or not.
I'm wondering if maybe we're all getting different senses. I'm not hearing a lot of objections to the current boundary. If anything, there's just a couple of maybe. Oh,
I object, and especially based on the fact that this was created prior to an actual steering committee meeting, and the wanting to have another pre-meeting to find the boundary for what will be a program that, look, as far as it goes to membership, I think the membership component is fine. Those within the two areas in between Arvin and Lamont, that would make sense. But this is also following another component, which I think we really need to be mindful of, that Jesus was speaking about, and Ms. Chavez as well. So, I think that this has to be deliberated, and yes, I understand that it's going to take some time to create a stable and agreeable boundary, but any collaborative effort takes time, and it takes a lot of vetting, and no great decision was made overnight. So if this is going to be a committee decision, and a decision for all those that live and work within that area, then I think that we have to do it with an official committee.
John Moore, who do you represent?
I represent more farms. We've been farming and live in the Arvin area for the past 100 years. So we've been there since 1922. I'm also the president of the Kern County Farm Bureau. So I represent all of the farmers, ranchers, and their employees that work within that area. So quite a large contingency.
Thank you so much, John. Now I would like to go back to the blueprint if possible and discuss when it comes to voting. And I know we don't have a clear CSE yet, but also when it comes to who has a say, can either CARB or the Air District respond to that as to who has the main say. As far as I know, the community gets to decide what the boundary is.
Yeah, so yeah, kind of where is the decision making made for that question around the boundaries? That's one question. Before we jump into that, I know that Maricella's had her hand up for a while, so I want to make sure that the voices on the people, I think on the phones only, get a chance to also speak up really quickly. So I just want to be mindful of that. And I do want to say we have 10 minutes left, so if we can try to be brief and wrap this part up, I think we can figure out our next steps quickly. So.
I was just going to add that, when we do ask for comments from the Spanish speakers on the Spanish line, we need to give them a few minutes to be able to respond back, because if somebody jumps in and starts speaking, then our interpreter starts right back into interpreting. So we can just give me, maybe 30 seconds so that I can see if there's any comments while she's translating this information at this time. So just one moment, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, and it sounds like we do not have it at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for checking. Great. So I want to be conscious of time, and it sounds like we have a few.
There was another resident that
had their hand up. Yeah, I don't see the hand up anymore, but oh, Jesus.
But yes.
Okay, let's have you be the last person, and we'll try to kind of figure out what our next steps are around this topic.
I just wanted to voice my objection as well, just based on the process. I definitely think that we should have a committee set based on those original boundaries, and have those people make sure that they have a seat at the table when this decision's being made. The process just doesn't seem very transparent at this point. And I forget, maybe it was Emma that brought up, maybe we should have one meeting specifically just to discuss about the boundary, because it does seem like it is a big issue at this point. That's all that I really had to say at this time. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So I'd love to hear from the Air District. It sounds like a lot of people are wanting to have another meeting to really talk about this some more without delaying our process and our next meeting to kind of figure this out more quickly. And so if you want to chime in and talk about what next steps could look like, and also clarification again around kind of whose decision is this, who gets to vote and decide on this expanded boundary.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak on behalf of CARB and what was in the blueprint specifically. This is definitely something that, when we've learned a lot through this process in developing these boundaries. And, I know Bianca was involved in chapter and then discussions, and the way that we've approached it is working with the community steering committee to establish those boundaries. And so we've looked to do the same thing here. What we were proposing definitely wasn't looking to finalize a boundary tonight. I think what we were looking to do would just be not wanting to possibly delay with opening up the opportunity for people in the expanded areas to apply for the steering committees in an effort to, while we fully understand that the discussion of boundaries is a very important topic, and it really establishes what we're going to be doing and where we're going to be doing it. And so we don't want to diminish that in any way. It's just there, and there's a slide to talk about this later. There's just a lot of work to do. And so it's definitely one of these things where we're trying to navigate getting an immense amount of work done, valuing the thoughts and the opinions of everybody that is here tonight, but while still making sure that we're making steady progress moving forward. And so that was where we're at. I mean, if what we could do is we could open it up. We're not going to finalize any boundaries until we have that steering committee established to make those formal, in whether that's in a separate meeting or the next community steering committee meeting. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think that the process would be that from a lot of the comments, although albeit not all, and obviously there were differing sort of comments on all sides, expansion, not expansion, and where to expand or just keep the yellow. In general, opening it up, as Ryan said, giving us time. And then that way too, we're not delaying. If we do at the next meeting with perhaps the CSC from the original boundary do decide to expand the boundary, we already have those applicants ready to go. And so we don't have to wait another week or two to get new applicants on. They're involved in the process already at that point, if that is truly the direction that it goes at that meeting.
Great. Okay. So I see Bianca's hand up. I don't know if you wanted to share one more thing about this topic before we close. I want to get a sense too, so about like how the next steps will happen.
Can I just give a suggestion that for the next meeting to make this a priority at the beginning, not leave it towards the end, so we could get this this next step rolling, because we're going to be stuck at the same position that we were in Shafter, and we don't want that to happen again. We don't want to have a whole year just wasting time. So just a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This is really great input, and I think we've a good start to this conversation. I want to hand it over to Erica to kind of take us through a little bit more as well of this agenda and next steps for the committee. Oh, I think you're still on mute, Erica, or we can't hear you.
There, perfect. Thank you all. And I think what this really speaks to is the importance of this process. And this is a really critical part of what you all will decide. It really defines how you move forward, even conversations about voting, right? Who can vote, how do you vote? We want to understand this and have this really be firmed up. So I just want to acknowledge that the intent is to have a really structured process around this, so that today's meeting is a little different because we don't have a formal committee yet, but we want to, and we want to be able to talk about how you're all going to move together and work together and have these really important conversations, right? You're going to have dissenting views. How do you reach consensus? How do you find shared values? So in the interest of time, we're going to go very, very quickly through a couple of slides, but I do want to make sure that we close the loop on this last part. So I'm going to go through the committee role and the committee process just to make sure that part's covered. And then when we do the wrap up, we will clarify what happens next as it relates to the boundaries. So on the slide right now is a recap of what you might have heard from CARB in terms of the role of this committee and how you communicate with the Air District, your relationship with CARB, and really how things work as a committee member. Right now, the boundary is determining which committee members are eligible to serve. So we certainly want to move that forward as quickly as possible so you can get to work doing this important work on air quality. Next slide. The blueprint is key, and we want to make sure you understand what's in it and that we adhere to it. And that's where this is a little bit of a gray area in terms of who gets to vote on who gets to be added to the CSC. Is it the current residents? Is it the potential members? Is it the original boundary? We're working through that process today, as you can see, in real time, but it will be formalized in a process through a charter process in the future. Next slide. The majority of these steering committee members will be residents, and as you have done today, you're all participating, you're all weighing in, and this community participation is so important. The job of the facilitator is to make sure that all the voices are heard and to make sure that you're all being elevated. And so that is really what we do. We don't take sides, we are neutral. We make sure that if you're a dissenting voice, even if you're the only dissenting voice, you still have a chance to make that claim. One of the other things that we do is we make sure that you're administering the process in a way that seems to work for you and elevates your voices. Next slide. So the steering committee members will include all of these groups, and what's important about that is this conversation we were just talking about and where the boundary needs to live. And so when I close it up and hand it over to the Air District, we want to make sure that we're thinking through, you know, some of these key elements of this. And the other piece that I think Ryan mentioned is as you extend your boundaries, you're going to extend the number of people that could apply for the committee. But the committee is still only going to be a certain number of people, just out of sheer logistics. We can't have 200 people on the committee, so we are going to have it be a manageable number. But all of those core members should be included and could be included as representatives as long as the majority of the committee is resident. Next slide. I do want to talk about stipends briefly. All residents are eligible for stipends, and so I think you do know that. The ILG team does administer that stipend program, and one of the things that happens is we track your attendance, and if you're in the meeting for 75% of it, you are eligible for a stipend for those eligible meetings, and then those get paid out monthly. Next slide. Next slide. We saw this a little bit with the CARB slides. This is the planning roadmap, how this would work. We are a little bit for this process, right? Defining the boundaries is part of the areas of concern, but it's even before that part. But as we move forward, it's a 2 to 5 year process. The first year is really developing your SERP and your camp, and then the years 2 through 5 are really about implementing all of the efforts that you've identified. Next slide. The really important key here, and however we move this forward, the reality is that we want the committee to be formed as soon as possible. And when that committee is formed, you all define your role. You define the approach. Today's meeting's been a lot of presentations, but future meetings are going to be collaborative. They are going to be built on trust building, consensus building, really centering your priorities, elevating your voices, and figuring out what are the shared goals, where's the common ground, how can you all work together, how can we work together to make sure that this plan reflects what you want your community to look like. Next slide. So the schedule of meetings, we have just requested potentially an additional meeting, so I'll ask the Air District to weigh in here, but in the traditional structure, there would be monthly meetings of the CSC, agenda meetings once a month as well in advance of those main meetings to make sure that that agenda, like you were talking about briefly, to make sure that we prioritize the topics you want to talk about. And then there might be in the first year in particular, additional meetings as needed to really make sure you hit the milestones you want to hit and you have the conversations that you want to have. I want to turn it back over to the Air District team and Jess and Ryan to figure out and to clarify what our next steps are on this boundary discussion. And then we can hand it over to Heather.
I'll let Ryan, I don't know if you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, and Heather unfortunately came down ill, so she won't be here either.
Yeah, but I'll take Heather's part.
But on the boundary discussion, it sounds like there's a lot of interest in possibly having a separate meeting to discuss this. We're open to that idea. If we see from the participants tonight, if that's their desire, we can look to set that up and have another discussion about that in our attempt to work together to establish that, and then look to put out the applications to people and businesses and others in those areas to be able to participate in the AB 617 process.
Great.
So yeah,
so
definitely
it sounds like
look for communications from us, I think, is probably the next thing you'll see as a group.
Yeah, and we can definitely get out a better version of the map that everybody can see and look at.
Zoom in and find your house and all of that.
Yeah. So I do see Paulina's hand, but before I take hers, I want to summarize what I've just heard from Ryan and Jess. As it relates to the boundary, number one, this process is already working. You guys are already kind of helping dictate how all of this works in your community in Arvin, Lamont. I think the idea is that they're going to send an email with follow-up information to everybody that's currently on the list that basically says, here's the map, look more closely, here's our recommendations from today's meeting. And then if there are additional comments that you have related to where that boundary needs to be extended to or not, you will have an opportunity to weigh in at a future meeting in a very short order. And the intention is to move forward quickly so that we can develop the boundary and then have the CSC set so that you can make formal decisions with formal structure and really have that voting capacity and the ability to work as a team in a unified way. So I do see two more hands, and I want to acknowledge those two and call on those two, and then we will move into public comment. Paulina and then Jose.
Yeah, I just want to, I know some folks commented about, and asked where folks' interests are, where kind of your motivations are. And I think it really hones in on that slide that the Air District shared regarding like this process is about building relationships and trust and really is centered on collaboration. So I would recommend that the district in determining the community steering committee, folks share where they're employed. Like, for example, if you're based in the Valley, but work outside of the area, but you're a nonprofit, whatever your background is, I think the more we share, I really appreciated John sharing where he's from and me recognizing where his interests are. And I think this kind of open transparency of where people's motivations and interests, I think we're not always going to agree on everything, like Erica said, but at least having that background information, I think will lead to transparency and kind of better results. So I would recommend that the Air District and CARB and other folks kind of share that information when the steering committee is formed.
You are absolutely right. That is such a good point. And we did kind of do that with your renaming on your screens, but you're right. You want to get to know the people around the room. You want to understand what they're thinking and maybe the perspective they're coming from, the empathy that you can give and share. You're absolutely right. So really, really good comment. Jose, close us out on this topic, please.
Sí, yo nomás quería decir que estaba de acuerdo que hiciéramos otra junta si se pudiera para poder hablar solamente de las boundaries, porque si no vamos a estar así para arriba y para abajo, para arriba y para abajo, y eso no es bueno. Mejor de una vez saber y movernos para adelante en lo que tenemos que hacer.
I just wanted to say that I agree with the suggestion of having another meeting only focusing on the boundaries. Otherwise, we're going to be back and forth playing with this topic, and that's not good.
Great, thank you. And I see a couple of reactions. Thanks to those of you using those reactions. It's helpful for us to see the feedback from you without, everybody. And I certainly appreciate that the Zoom technology works for all of us in this way. I see Jessica's hand. Do you want to wrap up, Jess? I don't see your photo anymore, but I see your hand.
Yeah, so Heather can't make it, but there was one little piece that was at the bottom of your slide that actually I think really ties in nicely with what Paulina just mentioned. Yeah. And that is I think one thing I think we can all agree in person, we would be able, that icebreaker wouldn't have been a poll. It would have been interactions where you're assigned to go meet someone you've never met and really understand their background. So we wish we could do that. One of the things we want to do, but I want to kind of maybe continue a couple of thoughts like this. And so I'm just planting the seed. One of the things we want to do is help maybe the community, the folks that are on this call, but especially also the district and the CARB folks who maybe have never even been to the Arvin Lamont area, understand each one of the different points of view, and also just understand the air quality concerns. And normally we would do this on a community tour. We would literally ask some of you to help drive us around your community, your area, where you farm, where you work, where you play, where you live, and really tell us sort of what motivated you. That in these COVID times, things are changing, but we're not there yet. We want to schedule a virtual tour, so kind of be on the lookout for some information from us on how you can get involved. And that will allow folks we would film perhaps you telling a little bit of your story, so that can help sort of bridge those gaps and get us, sort of the folks who aren't in the community, involved in understanding that. One of the other topics, and this is just planting the seed, I know we're already talking about extra meetings, but sometime down the road, we would love sort of more of like a casual, not real meeting, but just sort of like a casual hang, probably virtually, where we do the same thing, where we all get together, totally optional, just to sort of talk and maybe do breakout rooms where we speak to one another about our background. So I hear you, Paulina. I think that is so critical, and we're a missing piece since we are starting virtual. So just keep that in mind as you think about your interest in continuing to work with us throughout this process.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jess. So the virtual tour information will be coming out electronically via email to those of you on the list. And then we also are looking at a potential, like she said, a hang or a happy hour or whatever we want to call it, but something for you to get to know each other in a more personal way, since we don't always have that much time. And we could have quite a lot of committee members as the boundary continues to grow and the interest continues to grow. So we're going to try and create opportunities for that connection, for that engagement, for you to get to know each other and what your general issues are and how you might find that common ground. We have reached the point of public comment, and so I do want to open that up right now. But before I do that, last chance for anyone to make any additional have any additional feedback. Since technically you're all public at the moment, but any other potentials that want to raise their hand and or have any thoughts before this meeting adjourns.
And also, if you go to the next slide too, if you'd like to put in the chat, just kind of general thoughts on what went well today, what we could do differently for future meetings. In general, we want to think about how we can improve every single meeting and be able to make everyone, productive and effective, and a chance for, people to have their voices heard, and work together really well. So we want to learn from every single meeting. So if you'd like to put in what you thought worked well today, what could have been done differently, we want to learn every time and get better at our meetings each month. So thank you.
Absolutely. So what we typically do, since we are recording on YouTube, is that we ask the Air District team to check those social media channels while we're looking for that public comment window. And while we're doing that, I will ask Bianca. You have your hand up.
I do have a question for the Air District. When is the Air District going to inform residents that are in the steering committee? I want to know the deadline so we could then schedule out the boundary meeting afterwards, because I think it's important to, or is it going to be until next month? Is there a timeline that the Air District has an idea right now? I'm thinking Ryan or Jessica could answer. I'm sorry.
Ideally, so one of the conversations that we were looking to have tonight, and it just unfortunately ran out of time, and I know Bianca had this conversation with you, is we had an overwhelming level of interest in participating in this process. A huge number of residents. We currently, right now, we have 50 residents signed up for the committee. We have from business, government, and others. Here I have the numbers. Of course, now I don't have that up. We have 7 business applicants, 4 environmental justice advocate groups members, and 6 government members. So it's right now we're almost pushing 70 members. And with an expansion of the boundaries, we could be looking at 70, 80 plus members. And so part of the reason what we wanted to try to do tonight was have a conversation with the committee. That's a huge number of people, and if we had that many in that level of participation in the meeting, we have some concerns at being able to have enough opportunity and give all the different voices an opportunity to participate and speak. I mean, we saw it tonight with some of the conversations, and that's going to be AB 617. There's going to be everybody's going to want to talk, and we have a concern that people will lose interest in this and get frustrated with it if we have such a large steering committee that people don't feel like their voices are being heard and they're not getting to participate. And so we do want to have a conversation with the steering committee about that. And that was part of the reason why we didn't finalize it, because I think this is a topic that we really need to sit down as a group and talk about, like, how do we do this, and how do we allow and make sure that we have enough time and opportunity for everybody that is making these commitments, and they're just not names on a Zoom list, but they're actually getting to participate. How do we do that? And so I think and I know it's gonna be tough, but maybe during that same discussion of the boundary, if we can also talk about that, how do we do that? And get input from the steering committee, or not the steering committee, but the people that have applied and have shown interest in participating in this process. How do we get it to the point where we're going to be able to do this in an effective manner. So for example, the largest steering committee anywhere in the state right now is 51 total. So we're already above that, and that's even before expanding the boundary discussion. And you're talking about 51. We already have like 67, 68. with the possibility of growing. So for Fresno, we had 30, we have 30, in Shafter we have 30, and in Stockton we had 40. So I mean, this is it's a credit to everybody that was involved in, working with the community and really getting people excited and for the opportunity. The one thing that we're very concerned with is their expectations versus what the reality may be if they're not going to be able to participate as fully as they thought they were going to be. And so look to, if everybody's okay, also have that conversation next time. And that will really determine, Bianca, how we can finish like appointing people to the steering committee.
Great, thank you, Ryan. So for next time, I saw a couple comments in the chat. Our goal for the next meeting is really to start talking about, how will we work together, especially in light of thinking about how do we work together with such a large group, whether it's thinking about subcommittees and ways to work in smaller groups. How do we work together with such a large group? And so in our next meeting, we'll really focus on kind of thinking through the structures of how we can work together, thinking through kind of our agreements and codes of conduct of how we want to create productive and respectful meetings, how we want to make sure to hear from everyone, in a respectful way, in a productive way. So that's will be a big part of our agenda for next time. Again, we have this idea of first, we also need to figure out the boundaries. And so stay tuned on that as well. And so that's a bit around next steps. And is there anything else that Ryan or Jess that you wanted to share, or Erica, before we close to public comment? So we want to see too if we have anyone else. And thank you for everyone that's chatted and given suggestions and ideas for how this meeting went, how future meetings can go. We'll definitely take all of this input and think about that together. So thank you. Any other last?
I just want to acknowledge that I do see some comments that are in the record. The chat is considered part of the record for this meeting. So everything that you've written in the chat is documented. So thank you, Laura. We see your comment and a number of others of you that put in what you liked and what could be done differently for future meetings. We see all of that, as well as everyone who participated in the meeting. Lots of you in groups today, and really, really good feedback from those of you that were in one room with multiples of you. We want to make sure we captured you and your names as well, and I think we've done that. But I would just recommend that if there's anyone that did not have their screen name changed or did not have their name captured, we want to make sure that we do. Please put that in the chat before you head out today. That is important just so that we can make sure that the tracking is accurate. That's all I've got.
Great, thank you, Erica. So do we have anyone on the line for public comment?
Does not look like we have any hands up or public comments noted via the website, email, or YouTube channel. I do see a hand from Jesus though.
Hi, so is this the public comment time?
Yes.
Okay, great. Earlier we had talked about the boundaries, and I thought that was a very good discussion. Somebody had asked about declaring, what your intentions are, your background is as far as employment. I think many of us got involved because we are residents in this area. We have interest in this area, and I've been working in the Lamont Arvin area since about 2011, 2010. I've lived in this area all my life, and I've heard different people that were involved, not currently, but in past terms with different city councils or different boards, talk about that they wanted to represent people that that didn't have a voice. And I really kind of took issue to it. And these same people, they come on and they say that these residents from the Arvin Lamont area are not well educated and that they can't speak up for themselves. It's absolutely not true. So that's essentially my motivation for participating, not only in an elected role as the chairman of the Bear Mountain Recreation and Parks District, but I'm also very inspired by residents like Jose Mireles and his wife Diana, that they really do take a lot of time to bring opportunities to these areas. Sorry, I got a notification for my batteries at 20%. I don't know if it cut off, but I'm inspired by people like Jose and Diana, that they take the time to volunteer and to bring opportunities to these areas. And so in the last 6 years, I've served on the board of directors for Bear Mountain Recreation and Parks District. And when this opportunity came up, I definitely didn't want to sleep on it. This is something that I know brings a lot of joy and pride to my parents and to my my immediate family members. And so I want to just participate in with full transparency and really kind of change this whole myth that these people in Lamont and Arvin don't have a voice, don't have an education. We're bilingual. I've graduated from Cal State University Bakersfield, and we're professionals. We're just not a bunch of farm working people. We that's our roots. I worked in the fields. My parents worked in the fields all their lives, and I just really want to speak up on behalf of those that are truly busy with family and work. And I just want to give a different perspective to this Lamont and Arvin community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jesus. That was an amazing contribution. Thank you for sharing. Any other final public comment? Well, we are really excited to work with all of you going forward exactly for those reasons, and just to have such a diverse group of people that have never been involved, people that have been involved a lot. We're bringing together this really amazing group of people for this process. And so we're excited to get the membership established, and so that we can start working together over this next year. So we look forward to it and are honored to get to work with you all. So thank you for the meeting. Sorry, we're 20 minutes over, but we like that we got a chance to hear from everyone that really wanted to share today. So thank you all, and we look forward to the next meeting. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much.